Ethan Caldwell stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his office, a white envelope in his hand. No return address, no note, just a wedding invitation stamped with the Ashford family seal. Victoria's wedding. He read the date twice. Then he set it down on his desk like it was something that could burn him. She hadn't just left him. She had made sure the whole world watched her do it. Every headline, every photo, every carefully placed rumor about why Ethan Caldwell wasn't good enough to keep. And now she was sending him an invitation like a trophy she wanted him to admire. He could ignore it. That would be the smart move. He didn't make the smart move. He grabbed his coat and took the elevator down. And that's when he saw her, a woman sitting completely still on the bench outside his building. Rain falling. Her eyes fixed on something far away. Not sad, not lost, just waiting. If this story already has you hooked, hit that subscribe button. I've got another unforgettable story dropping tomorrow. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all around the world. Now, let's get back into it. Ethan almost kept walking. He didn't. And before that night was over, he would realize the woman on that bench wasn't waiting for rescue. She was waiting for him. Ethan's assistant placed 3 names on his desk by morning. All 3 were the right kind of women, polished, well-connected, the kind who knew how to smile in a room full of people who were watching. He made the first call from his car, the second from his office, the third from the elevator going down. All 3 said no. Not rudely, politely, carefully, the way people say no when they've already heard things they don't want to be near. He stood in the lobby for a moment, phone in hand, and stared at nothing. Ethan Caldwell did not ask for things twice. He didn't chase. He didn't beg. He had built a company worth more than most small countries, and he had done it without once lowering himself to desperation. But he was going to that wedding. That part wasn't negotiable. Victoria had made sure every newspaper had the story when she ended the engagement. Sources close to the couple say Caldwell became too controlling, too cold. He had read the words in a coffee shop on a Tuesday morning like everyone else, like a stranger reading about someone else's life. He was not going to walk into her wedding alone. He pushed through the front doors and the rain hit him immediately, cold, steady, indifferent. He reached for his keys. That's when he saw her. She was sitting on the bench just outside the entrance. No umbrella, no bags beside her. Her coat was thin for the weather and her hands were resting in her lap like she had decided, at some point, to stop fighting the rain and simply let it fall. She wasn't huddled, wasn't scrolling a phone, wasn't watching the door. She was just sitting there, completely still, like someone who had learned that stillness cost nothing. Ethan stopped. He didn't know why. He told himself later it was the calm, that it didn't make sense, that a person sitting in the rain with nothing should not look like that. He walked toward her. "I have an event Saturday evening," he said. "I need someone to attend with me. One night, no questions, $10,000. She looked up slowly. Her eyes were steady, not surprised, not grateful, not the way people usually looked at him when he offered something. She just looked at him, the way you look at a problem you've already considered. "Which event?" she said. "Not how much, not are you serious, not thank you. Which event?" Ethan held her gaze. 4 seconds, 5. "A wedding," he said. She was quiet for a moment. Rain tapped against the bench between them. "Fine," she said. "I'll need a dress." She still hadn't smiled. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan Caldwell had no idea what he was dealing with. The hotel suite was on the 14th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows, white marble, a view of the city that most people paid to look at in photographs. Ethan had booked it in 10 minutes without thinking about the cost. He watched Hannah walk through the door ahead of him. She didn't stop, didn't look at the view, didn't run her hand along the marble counter the way most people did the first time they touched something expensive. She walked to the center of the room, turned once to check the layout, and sat down with her back to the wall and her eyes facing the door. Ethan noticed. He didn't say anything. The stylist arrived 40 minutes later. A woman named Claire who worked with half the names on the city's social calendar and knew exactly how to make someone look like they belonged somewhere they didn't. She circled Hannah slowly, tilting her head, considering. "She doesn't need much," Claire said quietly, more to herself than to Ethan. "She carries herself like old money. The dress just has to keep up." Hannah said nothing. She sat straight, hands in her lap, while Claire moved around her, not stiff, not uncomfortable, just patient, like she had done this before and knew it would end. Ethan leaned against the doorframe and watched. He had given Hannah a cover story on the drive over. Simple, clean, an old acquaintance, a mutual connection through a friend of a friend. Nothing that required too much detail. Most people needed to rehearse it, ask questions, clarify. Hannah had listened once, nodded, and moved on. Now she was reviewing a small card Claire had left with the hotel's dinner menu. She didn't look up when a staff member knocked and entered to bring towels. She simply said, "Thank you, just leave them by the door, please," in a tone that was warm but precise. The kind of tone that expected to be listened to. The staff member nodded and left. Ethan crossed his arms. "How long were you on that bench?" he asked. "Long enough," she said. "That's not an answer." "I know." He tried again. "Where did you stay before that?" She set the menu card down. "Ethan." It was the first time she had used his name. She said it without edge, without warmth, just a word that meant stop. "You hired me for one night, not for my history." The room went quiet. Claire glanced between them and found something very interesting to do with a garment bag. Ethan looked at Hannah for a long moment. She looked back, steady, unbothered, giving him absolutely nothing. He had spent 15 years reading people, cross boardroom tables. He couldn't read her. And that, more than anything else, was what made him certain she was hiding something worth finding. The Ashford estate looked exactly like money that had stopped trying to prove itself. Old stone, tall hedges, lights strung across the garden in a way that looked effortless and cost a fortune. Guests moved through the entrance in quiet clusters, wearing the kind of clothes that didn't have visible labels because they didn't need them. Ethan stepped out of the car first. Hannah followed. She paused for exactly 1 second at the top of the steps, not hesitating, observing. Her eyes moved across the entrance, the garden layout, the staff positions near the far left door. Then she walked forward. Ethan stayed half a step behind her and said nothing. Inside, a man near the bar turned as they passed. Hannah glanced at him briefly. "Richard's been with the Ashford family for 11 years, she said quietly, almost to herself. "He won't remember me. He never looked directly at anyone who worked below the 3rd floor." Ethan turned to her. "What?" But she was already moving. He watched her work the room without appearing to work it. She didn't approach people. She positioned herself. She listened before she spoke. When a woman in a blue dress leaned in to introduce herself, Hannah already knew her name, her connection to the family, and the name of her husband's firm before the woman finished her sentence. Ethan could tell by the way Hannah responded, one beat ahead, never surprised. She had been here before. Not this event, this world. Then he saw Victoria. She appeared at the far end of the room in ivory and pearls, moving through her guests with practiced ease. She was laughing at something. Then her gaze swept the room, the automatic scan of someone who always needed to know who was watching. It landed on Hannah. The laugh didn't disappear. It just stopped moving. Victoria's expression held for 3 full seconds, a stillness behind her eyes that didn't match the smile still sitting on her face. Then she looked away. Hannah had already turned her back. An hour later, Ethan found himself near the garden entrance when he heard Hannah's voice, low, unhurried, speaking to a man he recognized. Gerald Marsh, 60 years old, one of the oldest names in private equity, a man who did not get rattled. He was rattled now. Ethan caught only the last line before Hannah stepped back. "The Whitmore account," she said. "I think you remember how that was closed." Gerald Marsh went the color of old paper. His glass stopped halfway to his mouth. Hannah smiled then, for the first time all night. Small, controlled, the smile of someone who had been holding a card for a very long time and had finally set it on the table. Ethan stared at her. He had no idea what she had just done. But Gerald Marsh clearly did. The car ride back was quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet. The kind of quiet that has weight, where both people are thinking about the same thing and neither one is ready to say it first. Ethan waited until they were back in the suite, until Hannah had set down the small clutch Claire had chosen for her and moved toward the window with her arms crossed loosely at her waist, looking out, not at anything specific, just out. "Gerald Marsh," Ethan said. "What did you say to him?" "Nothing important. He looked like you'd threatened him." "Some people have guilty consciences," she said. "That's not my fault." Ethan sat down on the edge of the chair across the room. He studied her profile, the stillness of it, the way she held herself like someone who had learned a long time ago that showing nothing was the safest thing you could do. "You knew that room," he said. "Not the guest list, not the layout, you knew those people, the way they operated, who answered to who." She was quiet for a moment. "I knew some of them," she said finally. "A long time ago, before things changed." "What things?" She turned from the window. Her expression hadn't shifted, still steady, still controlled. But something behind her eyes moved, just once, like a door opening a crack and then closing again before you could see what was inside. "That's not what you hired me for," she said. "I'm not asking as your employer." "Then what are you asking as?" He didn't have a clean answer for that. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and looked at her directly. "I don't know what you're doing," he said, "but whatever it is, don't do it alone." Hannah went very still. It wasn't the words, it was the way he said them. No angle, no trait attached, just a statement sitting in the open air between them like something he hadn't planned to say and said anyway. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she picked up the clutch from the table, walked to the bedroom door, and closed it quietly behind her. The room was dark. She didn't turn on the light. She sat on the edge of the bed and reached into the inside lining of the clutch, past the zipper, into the small flat pocket that Claire had never noticed. She pulled out a photograph, folded once, worn at the crease from being opened and closed too many times. She unfolded it. Her father, younger than she ever remembered seeing him, standing in front of a building on a bright afternoon, one hand in his pocket, smiling at whoever was holding the camera. The building had a different name above the entrance now. She didn't cry. She never cried. She just looked at his face for a long time in the dark, and then folded the photograph carefully and put it back where no one would find it. Ethan made the call Sunday morning. His legal team had 3 investigators on retainer, men who found things that weren't meant to be found. He gave them one name and told them he needed everything by end of day. They called back in 4 hours. "There's nothing," the lead investigator said. "What do you mean nothing?" "I mean nothing. No address history, no employment records, no credit file, no social security activity past 5 years ago. It's like she stopped existing." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Go deeper." "I already did. That's why I'm calling." He heard the man exhale slowly, the specific exhale of someone who had found something and wasn't sure how to say it. "There's a sealed legal filing," he said. "Federal level. It took some time to locate because it's buried under a corporate action, not a criminal case. Someone paid to have it done quietly and done right." "What kind of filing?" "Identity erasure, civil record suppression tied to a corporate insolvency case." A pause. "The company was called Whitmore Capital, private equity, strong reputation for about 30 years, then it collapsed fast and ugly about 5 years back. The filing removed a private individual from all public records connected to the case. Name, history, association, gone." Ethan stood up from his desk. "Who filed it?" The investigator said the name the way you say something you've checked twice, because you don't believe it the first time. "Ashford Holdings." The room went very still. Ethan put the phone down without ending the call. He walked to the window and stood there with both hands flat on the glass and looked at the city below without seeing any of it. Ashford Holdings, Victoria's family company, the same name on the wedding invitation sitting in his recycling bin. The same family whose estate Hannah had walked through 2 nights ago like she already knew where every door led. Hannah Whitmore hadn't fallen off the map. She had been pushed, deliberately, legally, by the woman who had just spent $200,000 on a wedding and smiled at cameras all afternoon. He thought about the bench in the rain, the way Hannah had asked which event before she asked anything else, the way she had looked at Gerald Marsh, not with anger, but with patience. The patience of someone who had been waiting a very long time for exactly the right moment. She knew whose wedding it was. She had always known. He picked the phone back up. "Is there a name?" he asked. "On the suppression filing, the individual whose records were removed." "Yes," the investigator said. "Hannah Whitmore." Ethan closed his eyes. Every conversation he'd had with her rearranged itself in his mind. Every deflection, every careful non-answer, every moment she had looked at him and given him just enough to stop him asking more. She hadn't been hiding from him. She had been protecting something. And now, he needed to know what Victoria had been so afraid she would do. The story broke Monday morning. Ethan saw it first on his phone at 6 a.m., a small entertainment news site, the kind that ran things other outlets wouldn't touch until someone bigger picked them up. By 7 a.m., 2 more sites had it. By 8 a.m., it was everywhere. Caldwell escorted mystery woman to ASHFORD wedding. SOURCES, say guest used false identity. There was a photo, clear, well-angled, taken from inside the reception, not from the street. Someone had been watching, someone with access. Hannah's face was visible. So was his hand at the small of her back as they walked through the entrance. His phone started before he'd finished reading. His PR director spoke fast and without pausing. "We need a statement by 9. Deny the connection, say she was a +1 mix-up, something clean and forgettable. Ethan, the board is all ready." "I heard you," he said. "They want an emergency call at 10. Henderson is furious. If your name stays attached to a fraud story going into the quarterly review we are looking at." "I said I heard you." He hung up. He sat at his desk and looked at the photo for a long time. Hannah stood straight in it, chin level, completely unaware of the camera or completely unbothered by it. He couldn't tell which. Either way, she looked like someone who belonged exactly where she was standing. Victoria hadn't posted the story herself. She never would. That wasn't how she operated. She would have passed it to someone she trusted, attached to just enough detail to make it credible, and then gone back to her honeymoon with clean hands. But she had moved fast. That meant she was scared. And people like Victoria Ashford didn't scare easily. Ethan thought about what his investigator had found. The sealed filing. The erasure. 30 years of a family's work legally buried under a corporate signature. He thought about Hannah on that bench, not broken, not desperate, waiting. Whatever Hannah had, Victoria believed it was still dangerous. His PR director called back at 8:45. "Ethan, you need to cut ties with this woman today. Publicly, cleanly, no room for interpretation." Henderson's exact words were, "Tell Henderson I'll call him after 10. "That's not. After 10. He ended the call. Then he pulled up Hannah's number, the one he'd put in his phone 2 days ago and hadn't used since. He stared at it for a moment. Victoria had just put Hannah's face on every screen that mattered to her world. She had attached Ethan's name to make sure he had something to lose. It was a clean move, efficient, designed to isolate Hannah completely and leave her with nowhere to go. It was also the move of someone who believed she had already won. Ethan pressed call. Hannah picked up on the second ring. She didn't say hello. "I've seen it," she said. Her voice was calm. Of course it was. "I know," he said. "Don't disappear." A pause, longer than usual. "Why not?" she asked. Because I think you're close, he said, and I think she knows it too. He found her in a coffee shop, 4 blocks from the hotel. Small place, corner table, back to the wall, eyes on the door, the same way she sat in every room. She had a cup in front of her that had gone cold. She wasn't reading, wasn't on a phone, just sitting with her hands flat on the table like she was holding something down. She looked up when he walked in. She didn't look surprised. He sat down across from her and didn't say anything, just waited. Hannah looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the table. Then she said, quietly, without any introduction, "My father built Whitmore Capital in 1987, 30 years. He started with nothing and he was careful with everything, every deal, every partner, every handshake." Ethan didn't move. Richard Ashford came in as a silent partner in 2003, Victoria's father. It worked for a long time. She paused. Then a deal went wrong, a big one. Offshore exposure, bad timing, a market that moved before anyone was ready. It happens. My father had a plan to absorb it. Her jaw tightened slightly, just once. He never got to use it. Richard Ashford moved first. Forged documents redistributed the liability. Media contacts ran the story before my father could respond, that he had been reckless, that he had misled investors, that the collapse was his fault alone. She looked up. It wasn't. He had the records to prove it. But by the time it went to review, half the records had been altered and the other half had disappeared. The coffee shop was quiet around them. He died 3 years later, she said. He didn't make a scene about it. He just stopped, like a man who had run out of reasons to keep going. She said it without drama. That was the hardest part to hear. I spent 3 years after that collecting everything I could find. Copies of the original filings, correspondence between Richard Ashford and the legal team, financial trails that didn't match the official story. A breath. I got close, too close. Victoria's legal team found out I was building a case and moved to have me erased before I could finish. No records, no identity, no platform to stand on. She looked at him directly. The wedding was the first time I could get back into that world without a name attached. I needed someone with access, someone Victoria wouldn't expect. A beat. I needed a door. Ethan held her gaze. You needed me. Yes. The word landed without apology, without softness. Just the truth, finally sitting in the open between them. He leaned forward. The evidence, he said. Do you still have it? For the first time since he'd sat down, something shifted in her expression. Not quite relief, something quieter than that. Every piece, she said. The Ashford ballroom looked the same as it always had. High ceilings, candlelight, the kind of crowd that had spent decades learning how to make cruelty look elegant. They were there to celebrate Victoria's new marriage, crystal glasses, quiet laughter, the soft sound of a string quartet playing in the corner. Hannah walked in alone. No Ethan, no escort, no cover story. Just a black dress, a small tablet tucked under her arm, and 5 years of patience coming to an end. She moved through the entrance without hesitating. A staff member near the door started to step forward. She handed him a printed invitation without breaking stride. Ethan's legal team had handled that part. She hadn't asked how. She found the venue's AV panel in under 3 minutes. She had memorized the layout from an event photograph published 2 years ago. The wireless override took 40 seconds. She had practiced it 11 times. She stepped back into the room and waited. Victoria was near the far window, radiant and untouchable, holding a glass of champagne and accepting congratulations with the ease of someone who had never once doubted she deserved everything she had. Then the screens came on. All of them, every monitor, every display panel, every screen the venue used for event slideshows and seating arrangements. They filled with documents, financial records, internal correspondence, forged signatures beside the originals, wire transfers that didn't match the official filings. A paper trail 20 years long that told a very different story than the one the Ashford family had paid to publish. The string quartet stopped. The room went quiet in stages. First the people nearest the screens, then the ripple outward, until the only sound was the soft hum of the building itself. Victoria turned. She looked at the screens. Then she looked across the room and found Hannah standing there, still, calm, hands at her sides. The same way she had sat in the rain outside Ethan's building. The same way she had sat in every room no one expected her to survive. Victoria opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The main doors opened. 4 people entered in plain clothes, badges visible, movements quiet and certain. Ethan's legal team had made the call 48 hours ago. Hannah hadn't known until this morning. She hadn't argued. The room parted. Hannah walked forward slowly and stopped in front of Victoria. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She leaned in slightly and said, low enough that only Victoria could hear, "My father built his name. You borrowed yours." Victoria said nothing. Her face had gone the color of ash. The officers moved in with quiet efficiency. No commotion, no struggle. Just handcuffs, clicking shut in a silent ballroom full of witnesses. Hannah watched her go. She didn't feel what she thought she would feel. She just felt tired. And under the tired, something fragile and unfamiliar. Something that felt dangerously close to being over. She wasn't sure she knew who she was without this. 3 months later, the sign wasn't up yet. Just a clean glass facade on a building in Lower Manhattan, the old address still faintly visible in the stone above the entrance where a different name had been chiseled out. The locksmith had come that morning. Hannah stood on the pavement outside with a single key in her hand and looked up at the building the way you look at something you were afraid, for a long time, you would never see again. The legal process had taken 11 weeks. Formal invalidation of the forged documents, restoration of public records, the Whitmore name reinstated across every filing it had been removed from, her father's reputation, not rescued, exactly, returned, set back in its proper place like something that should never have been moved. She had sat alone in a lawyer's office when the final document was signed. She hadn't told anyone what time it was happening. She heard footsteps behind her now. She didn't have to turn around to know. Ethan stopped beside her, hands in his pockets, looking up at the same building. He didn't say anything right away, just stood there the way he had learned to stand near her, without pushing, without filling the silence with things that didn't need to be said. She had told him twice that he didn't need to come today. He had shown up anyway. She turned and looked at him. "You're still here," she said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't quite a statement. It sat somewhere in between the kind of words that mean more than they say. He looked at her evenly. "I told you not to do it alone." The street moved around them. A cab passed. Someone's coffee cup rattled in the wind. Hannah looked at him for a moment longer than she usually let herself. Then slowly, without announcement, she smiled. Not the small, controlled one from the ballroom. Something quieter than that. Something that reached her eyes and stayed there, unhurried, like it had been waiting a long time for a moment that actually deserved it. She turned back to the building and lifted the key. "Come on," she said. They walked toward the entrance together. Hannah slid the key into the lock. It turned cleanly. The door opened onto a dim, empty lobby that smelled like fresh paint and old stone, like something ending and something beginning at the same time. Her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it. She glanced down. Unknown number. 1 message, 12 words. "Your father had a second partner. Someone Ashford never knew about. I think it's time we talked." Hannah went still. Ethan looked at her. "Everything okay?" She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she closed her hand around the phone and stepped inside. "I don't know yet," she said quietly. "Thanks for staying with this story right till the final moment. You're the reason these stories come alive. If you're ready for another powerful journey, just tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a quick comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I'm excited to see your thoughts and connect with you down.